Here's a sneak peek from today's episode.
If you're going to do new, interesting, optimized things in the 21st century, do new, interesting, optimized things. Don't take old practices and try and cobble some tech onto it and expect a better outcome. That's just dumb.
Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by Chase. Chase, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on here.
Chase, I am really excited for this conversation. I think it's something that marketers need to hear. But before we dive in, you have a fascinating background. Tell us a little bit about who you are and kind of what you love about content and marketing.
Yeah, so I'm retired Navy. I was a cryptologist, and I worked at the NSA for a while. I was at Forrester Research for a bit, and then I've been consulting for a while since then. And one of the things that's kind of become part of the work I do is I get engaged in like go-to-market and bringing brands into the space and those things. I do my podcast, which is the Dr. Zero Trust thing. But it's been very interesting for me to kind of, I guess you'd say, having to jump into marketing rather than sort of vectoring into that space. But it continually challenges me. Honestly, I think marketing is probably more challenging than cybersecurity, if I'm honest.
Wow, that's a bold claim right there. I mean, for those of us who don't know much about cybersecurity, that sounds intimidating. So I love it. So Chase, what we're going to talk about today is really why marketers are afraid of demos. So why do you have this sentiment? What do you think? Kind of explain a little bit about that to kind of kick things off.
Yeah, so about 2 years ago, I was actually consulting for an org, and I was tasked from them to be what they considered as a senior sales engineer. And the only thing was, because I wasn't an employee, I couldn't demo software. So, I mean, talk about being basically guaranteed to fail. You're going to try and sell our software, but you can't demo it. We have to have one of our people on the call. So many times we would line it up and I'd get a lead and we'd be ready to go. And then I would try and do the logistical shenanigans of making the demo happen, and it would fall on its face because we know that doesn't work, right? You've got folks in, I don't know, you're trying to do a demo for somebody in Kuala Lumpur and it's 2 a.m. over here in the East Coast or whatever, and it just doesn't play out right. And for me, after losing commission on a whole bunch of deals because of that, I just got fed up and I was going, there's got to be a better way to do this. So I worked with some friends of mine and we built a platform to kind of alleviate that. But the interesting thing is we still deal with the same thing now, even though there's a platform that's made this to automate that whole process, is people are so bound and controlling about letting people try their software that it actually derails the sales process and it throws marketing on its head because you make all these promises and you market your tech and you tell people it's going to be the best thing. But the moment they say, cool, let me use it, pump the brakes. Like we have a process here rather than it's software, go nuts. And if you like it, we'll deal a deal like that. That's what blows my mind.
Yeah. So naturally, as someone who's spent their whole career in marketing, I'm thinking about it, and I know that a lot of marketers are going to be hesitant because they're looking at their KPIs. They're looking at the numbers that they're being judged by to say, okay, you're being effective, you're not being effective, you're doing a good job, or you're not. How does that kind of translate into the system? Where does the demo in this circumstance fit into the process? And maybe how do people measure success in that kind of an ecosystem?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. We actually had to build a bunch of analytics into our system that talked to the CRMs to give the marketers those bits of information. Did a lead convert? Where did they come from? How long did they spend in the demo? What did they click inside of the demo? Those types of things. And the interesting thing is we provide that to them, no problem, no cost. It's all API driven, but you still get these folks that are like, I don't know if this is providing us the value we expect. And the question becomes, what value are you expecting? You're looking to get at bats and you're looking to get people trying your software, and that should be enough to justify what you're doing is valuable. What else is there? Because I mean, we don't all close 1,000% of every sale that we get that comes through the lead door. So there's the disconnect exists there where it should be, what are actually valuable metrics? What does a real lead look like? And then are we able to close based on leveraging technology instead of this kind of mishmash old approach with some new stuff thrown in? Like if you're going to do new, interesting, optimized things in the 21st century, do new, interesting, optimized things. Don't take old practices and try and cobble some tech onto it and expect a better outcome. That's just dumb.
I love it. So I know a lot of times, marketers love their call to actions. They love to be able to say, okay, take this next action. So let's say someone is in a demo. They haven't talked to sales. They haven't talked to anyone in the business. They're playing around with the software. What's the recommended call to action to progress them in the sales circumstance and actually help them progress to the next steps?
So for us, if a vendor has a chat bot or something, we actually integrate the chat bot into the VM itself so that your prospect can talk to you in real time and ask questions about the software, or you're able to do like an exit survey and have a CTA on the back end of that. I think that the thing that shows up very often is folks will say, "Oh, well, I don't know if someone's going to man the chat 24 hours a day." You don't have to do that. Are you? I ask them all the time. Are you aware that your software will create records for you based on those things, and then you can go back to those people? Like, unless it's a burn the building down, hair on fire type problem, it's okay to get back to them the next morning when you walk in and check your CRM. So the CTA stuff is great. I think one thing that stands out to me too, that kind of is a disconnect, especially in cyber specifically, is we thought lead people to death and we get them engaged and interested in the approach and the way we solve the problem. But when they actually want to figure out, does what you're trying to sell me solve the problem, then it goes hands-on, process slows down, very archaic approach. And that call to action derails the whole process. If in a perfect world, right, you want to grease the skids. You want somebody to go from reading a white paper or listening to a podcast to trying out the software to buying the stuff all in one fell swoop.
I love it. Yeah, that's great. So when, if at all, does the sales team get involved? I know that there's going to be people listening in saying, okay, great. Well, how does sales help? Where do they become effective? What does their job change into? What are your thoughts on that?
I think if you've got good marketing technology nowadays, especially on the demo side, your salespeople should be way more enabled with effective information and data that comes into the CRM via API. So if you can imagine, like right now, if you're using some of these old practices and manual demo stuff where you don't get that data, that fidelity, you can have folks that will say, oh, there's a lead in the CRM, and they'll have a person's email address and maybe a white paper they read or whatever else, and that's it. And they have to reach out kind of cold, and maybe they get to have a pseudo warm conversation about, oh, I saw that you were at this webinar. Do you think we solve your blah blah blah? Whereas if you're using tech correctly, the sales team will get really good fidelity to generate the conversation and be able to reach out and ask questions that are going to lead to a sale. And I personally think that a lot of times we kind of give the sales team a bad starting place where we expect them to deliver results based on mediocre output from a variety of things that we just kind of sledgehammer across the space. If I'm trying to sell you cybersecurity software that solves data security, my sales team should have really good information about your interest and usage and care for that particular problem space. Nothing else matters. Don't give me everything. Give me what I need to sell the software.
Yeah, I love that. So another part that marketers are always paying attention to on their website, conversion rate optimization. I'm sure there are marketers that already gone here. If I have a call to action of doing a demo with a sales rep where it's just a phone call, things like that, versus actually just diving into the software, what are some of the expected, increases in conversions? Do you see that consumers want that more or less? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think the one thing that stands out on the data that I've seen so far is that the free trial thing seems to be something that folks go, okay, that's a really useful conversion point. B2C, like if you're selling software to a consumer, free trials are a good thing because the B2C conversion is pretty high. You see it, you like it, you use it, you and your credit card going about your day. Your B2B is miserably low. I think the conversion rates I've seen around that are like 3% is actually a good number. And that's because you're going to take your product and you're going to have somebody go there. And number one, they're going to be wanting a demo, but they got to go schedule logistics to do the demo. Then the other side is, if it's a free trial, here's your free trial. Every time you do a free trial, there's configuration issues, there's downloads, there's installs, there's other stuff. It's like somebody saying, hey, here's a really awesome Corvette. Oh, you want to drive it? Install the transmission. Like, you'd be like, what? No, I'm not doing that. And I mean, that's where we go wrong. That's where you're going to lose conversion for B to B, is that you introduce friction rather than introducing optimization.
I love it. So let's say I'm a marketer listening to this podcast and I'm like, okay, let's give this a shot. Let's try sending people to the demo. How do I convince the powers that be, the C-suite or the executive suite, that this is a viable call to action, that we should at least try something like this out? How do you approach getting that approval and that buy-in to experiment with something like this?
Start small. Start with a really particular use case. Start with kind of your typical whiz bang sort of logistical demo that you schedule, right? Usually most vendors have, we 9 times out of 10 demo X, Y, or Z, and put that into your process and make that where it's kind of hands off, because you know that it works. You know the value proposition comes through. You've probably got really good documentation and videos and all those things. Take that and make it part of that digital virtual process, and then abstract away the other stuff. And what's also interesting there too is, if you do that, when I started doing what I'm doing over at the Demo Force side, we thought SEs were going to hate it because they were going to lose their opportunities for those. SEs don't want to do demos. SEs want to do POCs and POVs and sell software. So if you do that correctly, you're actually freeing up your workforce to go off and do more valuable things, because a demo, even at scale, I might get a couple of sales out of every, I don't know, X number of demos. But if I get to POC, POV, where I need my experts to do it, we're talking about a 50, 60% close rate. So you want to be in that space. And that's something that I don't think gets enough attention. If your C-suite is paying all these people this money, wouldn't it be smarter to invest where there's actually going to be return on that investment, instead of just throwing money into the marketing hole?
Yeah. So I can also imagine there's a lot of people that are concerned that they don't have self-onboarding inside of their product, and that it's maybe not as intuitive as it should be, or maybe it just involves some kind of an onboarding specialist. How do people overcome that? How do they get to some of the beneficial features that really show the value and have people kind of get it if they're not having their hand held in the process?
So that's where, inside of the demo system, you should have your skids as greased as possible, right? You should have YouTube videos, you should have instructions, you should have knowledge base, you should be able to walk people through that. And again, like the goal in a demo, and I think this is where things get kind of convoluted too, is a goal of a demo is to get someone further down the rabbit hole towards a POC or POV that's going to lead to a sale. You're probably in a B2B world are not going to sell software in a demo. That's not going to happen. So I think if you really get too concerned about, are we onboarding them all the way through? Is this super perfect? Is this the full experience? Does this apply to all verticals? You're never going to get there. Every business, especially in the software world, has got its nuances and changes, and you need experts to do that. But simply saying that we can't do automated demos because of those nuances is a cop-out, if you ask me. Put all the information in there, make it where people can understand and play with it and get familiar, but don't not do it because you're worried that someone might have a potentially not optimal experience.
No, I love that. Well, Chase, I think this is a fascinating subject. I think it's something that marketers need to take a second look at and see if there's an opportunity moving forward. Absolutely love it. If anyone wants to reach out and connect with you online, how and where can they find you?
So the site is www.demo-force.com, or you could reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find. Chase Cunningham is the name. I'm the only one there with a cartoon avatar, so pretty easy to find. And I would welcome the opportunity to talk with anybody about this, because you want to sell more software, you got to let people try your stuff out.
I love it. I love it. Well, again, Chase, thank you so much for the insights and everything you've shared today. This has been amazing. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for having me. This is great.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.